It's time to get back into the ring because Nova isn't bringing out one, but two gigantic robots to duke it out for the top dog spot in Nova Grappler.
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another set review for V-BT11 Storm of the Blue Cavalry. We already discussed the cards for Aquaforce as well as for Nubatama, so if you have missed one of those videos, then check out the link on top where you can check out the set reviews for the respective clans. But today, we're gonna dive straight into the new cards for Nova Grappler, as this set not only brings the return of Extreme Battler Victor, Nova Grappler also held this set's budget archetype in the fan favorite archetype, that is Blaus. So without further ado, let's jump straight into the new cards for Nova Grappler and see what Extreme Battlers as well as Blaus bring to the table of this intergalactic tournament that is Nova Grappler. And we're gonna start it off, of course, with the generic reprints and the triggers, and Nova Grappler got a reprint of a crit and a front, which both are gonna be just 1 stars. Then they also got a new heal trigger, which is Ernest Second, which is once again a 1 star, as we already have a heal trigger in Novas. And then they also got a brand new draw trigger, which is Memory Bot L Dale, and this is a 3 star because we still can acquire some extra draws for the trigger lineup themselves. Then for the final trigger, they've got the new Sentinel Critical, which this time is Extreme Battler Break Pass, and this is once again a 5 star critical trigger, just like all the other Sentinel Criticals. Then I also got a new starter in the likes of Blau Junger, and this is going to be a 1 star as just a generic starter, but for the Blau engine, it's actually important to run this starter as it synergizes with other cards within that engine. And then finally, of the basic cards, they've got a new vanilla, which is this grade 1 Lightness Cool, and this is the 15k shield grade 1, but it's still going to be a 1 star for me. Now moving on to the generic basic support, we see this grade 2 Cutting Gyre, and its abilities Auto Rearguard Circle when placed cost Soul Blast 1 and rest this unit and another rearguard and draw a card. So this is something we've seen way back at the beginning of Nova Grappler, a very similar card that has the exact same skill, I believe without the Soul Blast cost, and it was useful at the time, but isn't useful anymore because we have way better cards in Nova Grappler that can just do better things. And for me, this is just a 1 star, as I'm not really a fan of the way that you can acquire these draws. There are way better draw engines within any clan, and even in Nova Grappler. The next card for Nova Grappler is a brand new Ashura card, as we've got this Ardit Ashura. And this unit has the ability Auto Rearguard Circle. Once per turn, when it attacks, cost Soul Blast 1 and stand this unit. So it's a very easy generic restander, and actually, although it's a 12k grade 3 without an excellent marker, I still think it's a 3 star card because it's just an easy way to get a restander, and it's a grade 3, so it's searchable with your grade 3 searchers. So actually could be useful for whatever deck you might play that focuses on restanding, or you just want to apply extra pressure, as you can attack this after the Vanguard attack, so you can stack criticals on top of it and have 2 swings with those criticals, so it might actually be useful. Then another peculiar grade 3 that we've got is King Kong Fighting Hermit Master Torga, and I probably butchered that name, but this is a brand new grade 3 support card for the Godhand Dragon deck, as its abilities are Continuous Vanguard and Rearguard Circle, the power increase of front trigger effects revealed for your drive checks, get power plus 5k. So another one of those 5k buffers for front triggers, like we've seen with Silver Fist, as well as the grade 2, which names I cannot come up top of my head. So it's very logical that it's synergized with that archetype. But it also has a second ability, which is Auto Vanguard and Rearguard Circle. Once per turn, when your drive check reveals a front trigger cost, discard a card from your hand, stand this unit, and it gets drive -1 until the end of turn. So now you can have this as a Vanguard that allows you to have potential 2 swings with the Vanguard, unlike Godhand Dragon that is just 1 swing with an extra drive check. Of course, you'll lose a drive check, so there's an annoyance factor that if you reveal a front trigger on your first drive check, that you then lose the second drive of that turn as well. So it's kind of iffy, but luckily it also works as a rearguard unit, so you can just have a restanding grade 3 rearguard, which is fine for this card because with the power that you will accumulate with all this front trigger, that means that you get rid of 1 card, but that probably means that your opponent has to sacrifice a lot of cards or just take the damage. So I think this is a solid 3 star card for the Godhand Dragon deck, and it is nice, an extra consistency bump to that engine if you want to play it still in this current format. Then with those grade 3s done, we've got a very interesting generic grade 2, which is Cool Hank, the old Ember clone for Nova Grappler. And its abilities are Continuous Vanguard Circle, when its attack hits, cost Soul Blast 1 and draw a card. this is fine. It's okay. But its uniqueness lies in its second ability, which is Auto Vanguard Circle. Once a turn, when it attacks, cost discard a card from your hand and stand one of your other rearguards. This is for me a pretty good 4-star card. It's not a 5-star because it costs a discard, which isn't my favorite kind of cost resource for a restand or whatever, but it's fine. But what this card brings to the table and why it's a 4-star is now thanks to this card in Nova Grappler, Novas, and especially the Victor engine, they can restand their rearguards for either a Soul Blast, either a Counter Blast, or now a discard. Meaning, no matter the situation you will find yourself in, you will have the resources to acquire your restands and to activate your multi-attacks and to enable your engine, which is really, really good. And Godhand is generic, so it can be splashed in any type of build. So just like I discussed with the Great Free Hermit for the Godhand Dragon deck, this can still work for the Godhand Dragon deck, as you can discard one card to restand one of your incredibly high-powered units, which will probably force more cards from your opponent's side. And also for the discussion of if a discard is good enough, if this card allows you to win the game on that particular turn, then what do cards in your hand actually mean if your opponent is already dead? So there's definitely a merit to this skill. So I think it's a very solid 4-star card for Nova Grappler. Then the last generic support card that we've got for the clan is the Great Free Searcher, which is of course Extreme Battler are a shit. And its unique effect is continuous on rearguard circle. If your unit was stand by a card's ability this turn, this unit gets power plus 5k. So this is pretty easy to fulfill for Nova Grappler because you're probably going to restand the unit in whatever build you're going to play. Even in Godhand Dragon, especially with the latest support that we've got now. So it acquiring the 5k power is pretty damn easy to fulfill. So for me, this is of course a obvious 5-star card because it's the generic Great Free Searcher for the clan. Now with the generic stuff out of the way, let's jump straight into the new archetype for Nova Grappler, which is unironically one of my favorite archetypes, which are the Blaus themselves. And we're gonna start off with this great one of the right chain, which is Blau Panzer. And its ability is Auto and Vanguard Circle. When placed by riding from Blau Jungler, look at the 5 cards from the top of your deck, reveal up to 1 card with Blaus in its card name from among them, put them into your hand and shuffle your deck. So this is the reason why you want to play the Blau starter, because just by writing this, you can check the top 5 for any Blaus and add it to hand. This is pretty much a guaranteed plus, because you have this grade 1 as a Blau, you have Blau Kluger as a grade 2, and you have 2 grade 3s that are Blaus. So everything together, that's quite a sizable package, which will increase the chance that you hit in the top 5 very significantly. So pretty good. But then we have the second ability, which is Auto Rearguard Circle. When placed, cost discard a trigger unit from your hand, search your deck for up to 1 grade 3 card with Blau in its card name, review it, and put it into your hand and shuffle your deck. So not only as a Vanguard unit can it help you to acquire any Blaus, on a rearguard it can help you to get any of your 2 Blau units. And both of them are very important and you want to have them both in your hands. So discarding a trigger is definitely rectified by the value you're going to get out of getting those grade 3s, as the whole engine revolves around these particular grade 3s. So overall, this is a really good consistency engine. I think it's a solid 3-star card for the engine. It itself will not push the engine as much, but it's a really good consistency tool to get to your pieces as fast and consistent as possible. Now if we step up the ladder and we go into an extra transformation, we get to the grade 2 Blau Kluger. And this is one of those integral key pieces to the whole engine to make it work. Its abilities are Auto and Vanguard Circle. When placed, cost counter plus 1. Look at the 7 cards from the top of your deck, reveal up to 1 card with Blau in its card name from among them, put them in your hand, and shuffle your deck. So where the grade 1 checks top 5 for free, this checks the top 7 for a counterblast. Once again, very likely that you were going to hit a card out of this search. Now his second ability is Auto Rearguard Circle. At the end of the battle it attacked, if you have a Vanguard with Blau in its card name, cost, put this unit into your soul and draw a card. This is a skill that we've seen time and time again, and it's tied and true that it is a very good skill. But on top of that, this effect that it puts itself into the soul is very important for a great freeze. So everything combined, this is for me a solid 4-star card, as it helps the engine and it's also a better consistency tool as it gets you those draws and those searches as well. Now we talked about these great freeze constantly, and that's because the whole engine works around the great freeze. So let's get into those great freeze, and the first one that we're going to tackle is Stern Blau Kluger. And its abilities are continuous on Vanguard Circle. During a turn, if your soul has a Blau Kluger, this is why the grade 2 needs to be in the soul, all of your grade 3 units with Blaus in their card name get power plus 10k. So that includes himself as well as the Galaxy Blau Kluger. And interesting enough, it also counts itself as the Vanguard unit. So all our grade 3 units are going to get those 10k buff, turning them into 22k beaters. And on the Axle Circle can potentially become 32 or 27, which are pretty good numbers you hit for absolutely free. But then on top of that, the magic happens in its second ability, which is Auto on Vanguard Circle. At the end of the battle it attacked, discard 2 cards from your hand, choose a Galaxy Blau Kluger on your rearguard circle, bind it, write that card as stand, and that unit gets drive -1 until the end of turn. So this has an inherent restand capability with its rearguard. So you can call the Galaxy to the rearguard circle, attack with it as a 22k beater, and then after you attack with the Vanguard, you can rewrite into that Galaxy, which gives you even more attacks. And interesting enough, because you can potentially play Axle 2, by riding into that Galaxy, you gain an Axle marker, you get the draw, and you have the 1 drive check, which basically negates the discards you're going to do for this effect, so you don't even minus on card advantage while applying multi-attacks and attacking twice with your Vanguard, which is pretty damn strong. So Stern Blau Kluger, being able to hit for massive numbers and give your rearguards massive power, as well as enabling a restand into another grade 3 while also not losing on resources, is for me enough reason to give it a solid 4-star card. It's pretty damn good. The only weakness that it has is that it needs to have that Stern Blau Kluger specifically on the rearguard circle, but luckily we have many cards that can search it out, so we have consistent access to that combo. Now let's see what Galaxy Blau Kluger has in store for us to see what we can get our hands on with this Stern Blau Kluger restand capabilities. And here we have Galaxy Blau Kluger himself, and its abilities are Continuous on Vanguard Circle. During your turn, if your soul has Blau Kluger, all of your grade 3 units with Blau in their card name get power plus 10k. So it's the exact same skill that we've seen on Stern, making it basically possible to keep that power buff no matter if we do the rewrite or not, which is pretty nice because that means we have flexibility in our attack patterns with the restand in the mix of that. But then we get its second ability, which is Auto on Vanguard Circle. When it attacks, cost counter plus 1, call to 1 Stern Blau Kluger from your soul to the rearguard circle. So not only could we have this Galaxy on the rearguard, attack with it, then attack with the Stern Blau Kluger Vanguard, then use that Galaxy that's on the rearguard circle to then rewrite it on top of our Vanguard circle, we then also can attack with that Galaxy and then call out that exact same Stern Blau Kluger to the side to have yet another 22 or 27k attack on an Axle 2 marker. These two cards together already enable you to attack 4 times for 1 counterblast, and 2 of those attacks are Vanguard attacks with drive checks. That's pretty damn insane, and you gain Axle markers while you're doing this. But it isn't where this card stops, because it also has the following ability. Auto, when rode upon by a unit with Blau in its card name, you may call this card to the rearguard circle. So where you actually want to sit on Stern Blau Kluger at the beginning of your turn, so you can do this whole superior ride into Galaxy while also popping those units out of the soul so you can attack twice with the rearguard, twice with the Vanguard. You want next turn to go into yet another Stern Blau Kluger so you can do the whole thing over again. But that means you'll need to find another Galaxy to call to the rearguard circle. Now thanks to this third skill, you don't even have to do that, because you can immediately call that Galaxy from out of the soul while you just rewrite with your Stern Blau Kluger, which is insane. That means as long as you can keep drawing into more turns, you can keep attacking for all these extra attacks that cost you almost absolutely nothing, as it's only 1 counterblast as we've seen so far. The entire engine beforehand is effectively free, which is really good. So with that in mind, I think it's once again a solid 4-star card. And you might think Stern as well as Galaxy Blau Kluger should both be 5 stars. And if you think that, that is completely fine. But the reason why I keep them at 4 stars is that they, in my opinion, are still budget decks that rely too specifically on Blau, so there is a good chance that you might miss your cards. And if you do not get access to those cards consistently, the entire engine shuts down. And it's also limited to what you can use and how effective that will be. So that's why I keep them at 4 stars and not 5 stars. But in terms of power potential and their output, if things go right, they definitely are clashing on the levels of other 5 stars. So if you think they're that good, I do not disagree with you on that part, but that's the reason why I keep them at 4 stars. But interesting enough, this isn't where this engine stops, because there's yet one other card which makes this whole thing insane. Because you want to keep rewriting this whole engine, but the problem right now is that every single turn we go to our next grade 3 turn, we need to get our hands onto another Stern Blau Kluger, which makes it pretty inconsistent, as that means we need to keep drawing in a very specific card, which we get less and less cards in our deck for us to fetch. But this next card fixes that issue completely, because our support card for the Blaus is this grade 1 Morgan Rot. Keep in mind, it's not a Blau, so it cannot be searched with all the other cards, but it's definitely an integral part to this engine, because his ability is Auto Rearguard Circle. At the end of your turn, cost retire this unit and return one of your rearguards with Blau in its card name to your hand. So when you go into Stern Blau Kluger, you can call a Galaxy, attack with Galaxy, attack with Stern, superior out the Galaxy will pop out the Stern, you attack with the Galaxy and then attack with the Stern, and at the end of the turn, you retire Morganrod and bounce back the Stern, and next turn you can write the Stern, which will pop out the Galaxy, and then you can do the whole riddle all over again. That's pretty damn insane. And for that, I think this is a solid 3-star card. And now you're thinking, whoa, why is this a 3-star card? This card is pretty nuts, this enables a lot. Yes, it enables it, but this card on its own does absolutely nothing more than that. So in the early game, it doesn't really do anything. In the mid game, probably doesn't do anything. And it's just an 8k booster just to retire itself to enable that play. So it's a consistency bump to what we want to do. Because also the problem is, this card is unsearchable. We need to hard draw into this card to actually get it. So that's the reason why it's a 3-star card, because it's unsearchable. It does one specific thing and is only useful for that specific thing. Yes, you can bounce back a grade 1 Blau to get another search for a grade 3. Yes, we can bounce back the grade 2 Blau Kluger. Don't know why you want to do that, but it's an option. But mainly this thing is made so you can bounce back your Stern Blau Kluger to rewrite once again the following turn. Now next up we've got a quote-unquote generic card, but the way how this works is actually a pretty nice support card for the Blau engine, because so far the only cost that we've seen besides discarding or retiring our own units is the single counterblast on Stern Blau Kluger. So for that we can also look at this grade 2, which is Brute the Beast, and its ability is act on Rearguard Circle once per turn. If your Vanguard is a grade 3 or greater, cost counterblast 2, search your deck for up to 1 grade 3, call it to the Rearguard Circle, and shuffle your deck. So if you could not find your Galaxy Blau Kluger, you can use this grade 2 to just immediately fetch it and call it to the Rearguard Circle and be done for the rest of your game plan if you have access to a Morganrod or your other key pieces. So this can actually work really nicely for the whole Blau engine, as it increases your consistency quite considerably. But it can still be utilized in other Nova Grappler decks that relies on certain grade 3s. It can be useful for the Godhand Dragon deck, because I believe that deck also doesn't really use a lot of counterblast, and it can search out the supporting grade 3 that can restand itself by a front trigger, or we can search out the common grade 3, the Ashura, that can just restand itself. So there is definitely a lot of options for this card, and it can work in different builds, but it depends on the build how effectively you can use the 2 counterblasts. So for that, I will only give it 2 stars. Yes, it can be crazy for the Blau engine, and it can maybe work in Godhand Dragon, but it definitely isn't as useful in a generic sense, because 2 counterblasts to search at the grade 3 is kinda heavy, and the fact that you don't add it to your hand means you cannot even use it as a consistency engine to get to your grade 3 right target. But granted, if that's what it could do, maybe it was a bit too strong, but for what it is, I think it's fine. Now, with that whole package discussed, let's talk about the other big robot in the set, and that is, of course, Extreme Battler Victor. And Victor has the following ability: Auto Vanguard Circle. When placed, look at the 7 cards from the top of your deck, call up to 1 grade 2 or less card with Extreme Battler in its card name from among them to the Rearguard Circle, and shuffle your deck. So sadly, it doesn't search out himself, but in this set we have 2 grade 1s and 1 grade 2 that are ideal targets for him to fetch out, and 12 cards in the top 7 is decent enough to actually hit something, and it's a 3+. So I think it's pretty fine, and it helps to do what Nova Grappler wants to do, flood the board, and it combats a little bit against Control Clan, which is pretty nice. But the main attraction for Victor lies in its second ability, which is Auto Vanguard Circle. When it attacks, costs Counterless 1, Soulless 1, choose up to 1 of your rearguards and stand it. If that rearguard stand 2 or more times this turn by a card's ability, this unit gets drive +1 until the end of turn. Includes stand from this ability. So basically he can restand a unit for a counterblast and soul blast, which is the same cost that we've seen on Lambros. Only Lambros could stand an entire column and give those units +5k, which is a lot better. But in Victor's case, he can get an extra drive check if that unit already stood one time before that he stood it. But in the overall grand scheme of things, looks definitely a lot weaker than Lambros, as Lambros can provide the same amount of value and actually pretty much more, because Lambros is also a triple drive Vanguard, a bit stronger because it's 25k, and he can give the column a 10k power and it's an entire column that they reset. But the difference here is that the whole Nova Grappler deck revolves around the fact that we can restand our rearguards multiple times, and those rearguards are going to acquire more value every time that they restand or when they are being restood. So this inherently gives you potentially more value than something Aquaforce will do that just relies on attacking multiple times. But to have a better understanding of what Victor brings to the table, let's take a look at the other Extreme Battlers that we have in this set. And one of those cards is this grade 1 Extreme Battler Soul Saucer. And its ability is Auto Vanguard Circle. When placed, cost discard a card from your hand and draw a card. So very simple cycle effect. And its second ability is Auto Rearguard Circle. Once per turn, when it stands, if this unit is on an additional rearguard circle, you may have this unit get power plus 10k until the end of turn. So it's 13k normally, it attacks, and then when it restood, it becomes 23k, which is actually pretty nice because that means you can hit over defensive triggers while you're getting more and more attacks, which is pretty good for Nova Grappler, as defensive triggers are usually their biggest flaw. So for that, I think it's a solid 3-star card. It's not amazing because it needs to be on an additional rearguard circle, so you cannot really effectively use it in the early game, but as a Vanguard ride target, it can help you to use this as a ride target and save your other grade 1s for once you actually want to call them to the rearguard circle. As for example, we have the following grade 1. That is Extreme Battler Gunbaru Gun. And Gunbaru Gun has the ability Auto Rearguard Circle once per turn. When it attacks, if you have a Vanguard with Victor in its card name, cost Soul Blast 1, stand one of your rearguards, and this unit gets power plus 5k until the end of turn. So this is the card that I hinted towards with Cool Hank, that we have a Soul Blasting card that can restand something, which is this. We have the discard cost with Cool Hank, and we have the counterblast cost, of course, with Kick Typhoon. Now this card is a solid 4-star card for me, because it allows you to restand something for a Soul Blast, which is a pretty good resource to get an extra attack. But it also turns this thing into a 13k attacker, meaning this can be an effective first attack that still hits without being boosted or something. Which is pretty good because that allows you to put your boosters on the other part of your field and you don't have to boost this thing. And this can also be just on an axial circle if you want to place it there, which is actually pretty damn good, and it allows you to be very effective with your cards. Now the only thing that I don't want to give this a 5-star card, which it definitely could have been, is the fact that this card is restricted to the Victor archetype. If this didn't have that clause, automatically a 5-star, because this could be insanely strong in any other Nova Grappler deck, but I can see why they put the Victor clause on this card. Now for the final new addition that we've got for the Extreme Battlers is a brand new grade 2, which is Extreme Battler Do Sledge. And its ability is Auto Rearguard Circle. When it stands by a card's ability, perform the effects below depending on the number of times this unit stands by a card's ability this turn. So every single time that it's being restood by an effect, you can resolve the following steps. So the first time it restands by an effect, you're going to resolve the first part. When it's restand for the second time, you're going to resolve the second part. And when it restood for the third time, you're going to resolve the third part. And what those parts are is, when it stood for the first time, this unit gets power plus 10k until the end of turn. So the first attack, it's a 9k, it restands, it becomes a 19k. Then when it restands again, then it gets Soul Charge 1. So you get Soul, which is pretty good for a card like Gunbaru Gun. And then once it restands for the third time, until end of turn, this unit gets power plus 10k, and your opponent cannot call Sentinels to the Guardian Circle during the battle this unit attacked. So to clarify, it's a 9k, it restands, it's a 19k, it restands, you get 1 soul, it restands, it's a 29k with the Sentinel Guard Restrict. Which is pretty good, as this is definitely on an axial circle, so it's not 9, 19, and 9, 29, it's actually 14, 24, 34. And that's really damn good. And ideally, this is going to be one of your targets that you're going to restand with Victor. The first restand is probably going to be with something like Gunbaru Gun, maybe Kick Typhoon or Cool Hank. So it's a 19k. Then you're going to attack with Victor, restand it, you gain the extra drive check on Victor, and then whatever trigger you're going to get, and ideally you're going to play criticals, you put them all on this thing, because this thing is going to attack for at least 2 more times, because now it's a 34k, thanks to the critical trigger that you get. and you can attack with a 34k that has a double critical, and then you can resend again, and it becomes a 44k double critical that cannot be sentineled. And if you have any other effect that can restand your units, you're definitely going to keep restanding this guy, because he's going to get the Sentinel Restrict for every single attack afterwards. So it can be a devastating engine card that allows you to go for a game once you acquire all the resources and cards that you need. So this, for me, is an obvious 5-star card. Not only does this allow to have a clear win condition for the Victor deck, it is also generic. So this can be played in any build for Nova Grappler that can restand multiple units, and most Nova Grappler decks can do that because cards like Kick Kick Typhoon and Godhand are generic. And these are definitely not the last cards that we're going to see, because interesting enough, an effect like this also synergizes with the Beast Deity engine that allows you to attack in the main phase and automatically restand them if your opponent is guarding your attacks. So there's many different opportunities for this card to be very useful for the Nova Grappler engine. So yeah, it's very obviously for me that this is going to be a solid 5-star card. No question asked. Now, with those Extreme Battlers discussed, let's go back to the Victor himself. And we see here, of course, Extreme Battler Victor, and we now understand what this card allows us to do. It allows us to potentially get a free plus in a top 7 search for 12 cards, but the question is if you're going to actually play those 12 cards, because of those free units, the So Saucer is probably your weakest card, which might not make the cut or might make the cut depending on how consistent you want to get access to the +1 of this card. But its unattacked skill allows us to enable a lot of things. The only problem that I have with Victor right now, and I already basically hinted it when I compared this with Lambros, is that it's the exact same thing as Lambros, but it's a lot weaker. It costs the same, but you only restand 1 unit instead of an entire column. This card doesn't give power to those units, and Victor himself is only 12k, while something like Lambros is already 25k on its own. So I'm kind of whatever about Victor, and I think I can only give it 3 stars as a boss unit because it isn't really that strong for what we've seen in the past. The only upside that this card has, what it provides for most other Nova Grappler decks right now, is that it's just an inherent restander on a Vanguard unit, which not every boss unit in Nova Grappler can do. I believe the Beast Deities could do this, but something like Godhand Dragon couldn't do this, and Perfect Riser is very restrictive in what it do, but Perfect Riser is a card of 3 years old, so pretty obvious that it didn't really do what it's supposed to do. But Victor, it doesn't really feel like a really good engine on its own. It's really dependent on its rearguard, and that makes sense because Nova Grappler is a very rearguard orientated deck. But because of that fact, I cannot give Victor more than 3 stars that it is right now. If Victor acquired a little bit more power, then I think it was a solid 4-star card. But currently it doesn't, and it's reliant on a specific promo, which we don't know if we're going to get. I believe it's somewhat soft confirmed, but I am not so sure, seeing as the news has been retracted to some extent. But with the information that we've got right now, and within this set, for me, Victor is sadly a 3-star card. But the engine around it looks pretty damn sweet. And with that, we've seen all the new cards for Nova Grappler. We have a lot of interesting stuff for the clan. We've got the new package with the Victor engine and Extreme Battlers, which looks really promising. Only Victor as a boss unit, for me personally, leaves a lot to be desired. But luckily for us, as a softened spot there, we have the entire Blau engine within this set, which looks incredibly powerful and really fun. So I'm very excited for those particular cards. And on top of all those, we even have some interesting new support cards for some generic stuff like Godhand, but also archetype support within the likes of the Godhand Dragon support cards, which looks pretty damn promising. The only archetype that didn't really see anything new is the Beast Deity themselves, but as soon as that Epic Busters is returning into the Clan Selection Plus Volume 2, means that Beast Deity will probably get something really nice next year. So with that concludes this set review for Nova Grappler. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of these new cards for the clan. Do you think that Blaus is pretty damn amazing, and are you super excited for the return of the best archetype within Vanguard? And what is your personal opinion about Victor? Do you think that I'm undercutting the card quite heavily by giving it only 3 stars and comparing it to a weaker Lambros because of the similarities between the cards? Or do you think that I'm right on the money, that Victor is definitely something left to be desired for what the clan actually should need? Or maybe you have a completely different spin on this argument. Let me know all your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. This video has been brought to you by our lovely patrons over at patreon.com/VanguardInsider. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a Patreon today. But with that said, I'm Mr. Time Leap, and I'll see you guys in the next one!